Is there anybody here that's new and would need or would like a little introduction to who is Dhruva Maharaj? Anyone would like a little introduction? Okay. You know who is Prahlad Maharaj, right? Prahlad Maharaj, devotee of Lord Nrsingadev. Prahlad Maharaj. Both Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj appeared during the first of the four yugas. The first of the four yugas is Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga is the age when the process for achieving spiritual perfection is meditation, dhyate, dhyan, meditation. According to the scripture, this age, the last of the four, it's Hari Kirtan, chanting of the holy names of Hari. And Satya Yuga, the process for achieving spiritual perfection is meditation. And the scene of when Dhruva appeared was very, very early, just after creation took place. What that means is there's 10 topics in Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarga is the first, that's Lord Vishnu sets everything up for Brahma to do the sub-creation, Visarga. So Sarga is what Vishnu does, Visarga is what Brahma does, and then after Brahma does what Brahma does, it comes next is filling up the universe with living entities. And one of the functions of, specifically of the human form of life, is arranged by Manu, and the first of the 14 Manus is Swayambhuva Manu, and Dhruva is the great-grandson of Swayambhuva Manu. Directly from the body of Brahma, so we're at the very, very early stages of creation. Not just a day of Brahma, but this particular description is not just the day of Brahma, but the very beginning of dawn of creation. So Swayambhuva Manu and his consort, good queen, Shatarupa, appear directly manifest by the body of Lord Brahma, very similar to how Lord Brahma manifested the four Kumaras, no assistance from his consort. Brahma is very powerful. So Swayambhuva Manu appeared and was given an instruction by Brahma, please assist me to fill up the universe. And so he and Shatarupa had 3 daughters, 2 sons. The younger of the 2 sons became the first emperor of the world, and Dhruva was his son. Uttanapada was the father's name. Dhruva was his son. And a whole intrigue happened when Dhruva was just 5 years old. He had a younger brother. The younger brother was the son of the co-wife or co-queen. Dhruva was the elder son. His younger brother was the son of the second queen. The second queen was favored by the king. So one day, when his younger brother was seated on his father's lap, Dhruva wanted to also get on his father's lap. But the mother of the younger son, her name was Suruchi, she insulted him very severely. Get down. And said many other things, very nasty things. And the father, because he was too much attached to Suruchi, didn't say anything. Dhruva looked at him, help. But he said nothing because he was too attached. He didn't want to fall in the disfavor of his favorite queen. So he said nothing. Crying, angry, Dhruva ran from the palace, went to find his mother, crying and crying and crying. And his mother advised him, many things happened. You need to tell the whole story. She advised him, don't be in a mood of retaliation against those who have hurt you. In this case, his stepmother. Rather, take shelter of higher principles. And the higher principle, you want this kingdom? Because that was what he wanted. Okay, I can't sit on my father's throne. I'll get a kingdom better than my father's father's father. Mother, how can I do that? Vishnu, she had great faith. She explained it in detail. Brahma got his powers from Vishnu. Swayambhuva Manu got his powers from Vishnu. She skipped her husband because he kind of fell into Maya. Too much attachment to his co-wife. So anything can come from Vishnu. You become very devoted, take shelter of the lotus feet of Vishnu, and anything can happen by his favor. So Dhruva said, very well. How do I find Vishnu? She said, I just lived in the palace. I heard that sages, they go to the forest to find Vishnu. Very well. I'm off to the forest. And off he went, 5-year-old boy, alone, looking for Vishnu in the forest. Super Soul, the personality of Godhead, inspired Narada to go find Dhruva, give his association. Dhruva heard the good advice that he heard also from his mother as well. He heard from Narada, don't be in this get back mentality. You can't find Vishnu in that spirit. And many, many other things. How to handle his emotions. 5-year-old boy, Kshatriya spirited boy. Dhruva listened very politely, said, your advice is very good. The problem is, my heart is broken. The words of my stepmother have pierced my heart, and your words don't stay in my heart. Instead, can you please give me an instruction how I can get to this kingdom I want? You're a great sage. I'm sure you know the way. Narada understood the determination of Dhruva. He gave him very detailed instructions. He complimented him. Your mother was right. To get what you want, the process of devotional service is the best way. In fact, it's the only way. You should take full shelter of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. And he gave him a whole teaching on devotional service. Details and details and details. Appropriate for that age, Satya Yuga. It doesn't look the same this age. The principles are the same. And he even gave him a place to go. Madhuvan in Vrindavan. Very sacred forest. And off he went. Dhruva circumambulated Narada 3 times. His heart filled with gratitude because he had full faith that what following Narada's instructions would help him to achieve, or allow him, or arrange for him to achieve Vishnu's mercy. So he went off. He did very extreme austerities for 6 months. And in 6 months, he had the personality of Godhead fixed in his heart in trance. He was a powerful little boy, 5 years old, powerful. Determination like even great yogis don't have, what to speak of our present age. As he was curtailing his breathing process, etc., 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 the universal breathing, the holes in the universe became blocked because he became like in oneness with the personality of Godhead. The universal flow of air was checked. The demigods were choking, and all the other people in the universe were choking. The demigods went to Vishnu in Svetadweep, appealed to him, help. We can't breathe. Please fix the problem. Vishnu said, no problem. It's just a little boy, the son of King Uttanapada. He's off in the forest doing extreme austerities, and that's the reason for the flow of air in the universe being checked. But I'll go visit the boy, and everything will be all right. You can go back to your heavenly kingdom. So they did. And Vishnu descended on the back of Garuda. And as he appeared before Garuda, the form of Vishnu that was in Dhruva's heart suddenly disappeared. Dhruva was startled. He opened his eyes, and there was that same form that was in his heart before him, along with Garuda. He fell at his feet, wanted to offer prayers. He was too much stunned, and also a little boy. He hadn't even gone to school yet. So Lord Vishnu, knowing his desire, his devotional desire, he touched Dhruva in the forehead, gently, with his conch shell. And by that touch of the Lord's conch shell, Dhruva became fully enlightened in all the truths of all the Vedas, very similar to what happened to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma received all the knowledge of all the Vedas within his heart. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha. According to the Bhagavatam, all the knowledge of the Vedas was imparted within the heart of Brahma. So also all the knowledge of all the Vedas was awakened in the body of Dhruva. So where we ended up yesterday, the experience that Dhruva had and the prayers that Dhruva offered, called Dhruva Stuti, we discussed them. They're very thorough, comprehensive. We didn't do wasn't feeling so good about it because they're so weighty, and we covered them quickly. But Dhruva finished his prayers and became silent. And that's where we ended up yesterday. So now we're ready to begin the discussion, part 6. And we haven't even finished the first 2 chapters. It's because it's so substantial, the story. Very celebrated part of the Bhagavatam. So moving from resentment, the resentment was towards his stepmother, as well as to his father, but his stepmother especially. So he moved on from that resentment. And now he's going to move into responsibility. So this whole topic is being narrated by Maitreya. We see seated by this cave here, the mountain areas of India. And the person who he's speaking to is Vidura. Vidura was on pilgrimage, you know, from Mahabharata. Vidura had been insulted by Duryodhana, and he left the royal palace, and to purify himself from the contaminating association of the Kauravas, headed by Duryodhana and his associates, he went on pilgrimage to holy places 34 years. In the end of the 34 years, he had this good fortune of meeting Maitreya. So he asks many questions of Maitreya. Maitreya is responding. So Maitreya is speaking. My dear Vidura, when Dhruva Maharaj, who had good intentions in his heart, finished his prayer, the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, who is very kind to his devotees and servants, congratulated him, speaking as follows. My dear Dhruva, son of the king, you have executed pious vows, and I also know the desire within your heart. He didn't say anything about, I want a kingdom. But the Lord knew. And I also know that although your desire is very ambitious and very difficult to fulfill, I shall favor you with its fulfillment. All good fortune unto you. Now let's be clear. He was the eldest son, and according to Vedic law or custom or culture, the eldest son becomes the next king. His stepmother said, not only you're not going to sit on your father's lap or your father's throne, you have to worship the personality of Godhead, undergo great austerities, die, and then if you're very fortunate by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, you can take birth from my womb, and then you can sit on your father's lap. So there. So he wanted not just, the throne of his father. He wanted a kingdom better than his father, who was Swayambhuva Manu, and better than his father's father, which is Lord Brahma. So what's better? What's higher than the kingdom of Lord Brahma? Spiritual world. There isn't something higher in this material creation than the abode of Lord Brahma. It's the topmost planet in the whole universe. That's what he wanted. Like little childish talk. I want the moon. Sorry, you can't have the moon. I want the moon. I want the moon. I want a kingdom better than Lord Brahma. So there. I'll show my father. I'll show my stepmother. Kshatriya spirit. So he's going to have that desire fulfilled. Badram te. Badram te. Let all good fortune be to you. He's blessing. O Prince, Rajanya Balaka, young boy, your desire for power is natural. Kshatriya boy. Therefore, I will fulfill that desire. But then you will not give prema. This is our Acharyas saying the dialogue between the two. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes, all auspicious is to you. Do not worry. I will also give you prema. This was the reference that you were asking about. Now, Snehavali asked a question. If he saw the personality of Godhead, didn't he already have prema? How can you see this personality of Godhead without prema? So the answer is, the answer we discussed yesterday, there are probably several answers. There are stages in spiritual life of perfection, perfect, more perfect, most perfect. So to see the form of Lord Vishnu, perfect, but it's going to increase and increase and increase in the intensity of affection. Now, it was already pretty intense, so intense that his withholding his life air was choking the universe. And then Lord Vishnu came, so he's going to enhance or enrich or strengthen his prema. There's Dhruva seeing Narada arrive. You previously said, "Oh, Brahmana," Narada, "please tell the correct method for me, desiring the best position in the three worlds which has not been attained by my forefathers or others." This planet greater than Lord Brahma. Please accept that place now. He's awarding him Dhruvaloka. Commentary. The fact that Dhruva Maharaj was very much afraid of in his mind, for he has aspired after material benefit in discharging his devotional service, and this was hampering him from reaching the stage of love of God. In the Bhagavad Gita 2:44, it is said, Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam, for those who are addicted to material pleasure, cannot be attracted to devotional service. The Lord assured Dhruva Maharaj that Dhruva would not be bereft of the Lord's love. Again, this is commentary. From the very beginning, and in the middle, and now once again, there's a major trend in the Dhruva story, and it's appropriate for us. So the application part is going from mixed to pure. Or Sakam Bhakti, going to Nishkam Bhakti. Dhruva achieved it. Childishly, initially Dhruva had material desires, and at the same time had the pure aspiration to be a great devotee. The Kshatriya boy, because his mother told him and Narada told him, and it was true, that he won't get what he wants, the Sakama, without the mercy of the personality of Godhead. You have to become very attached to the personality of Godhead. Generally, the Lord does not award a pure devotee material opulence, even though he may desire it. But Dhruva Maharaj's situation and qualification was a special case. In spite of having material opulence, he would never be deviated from love of God. The same idea is expressed, some of you may know, from the story of Prahlad, because Prahlad was also awarded the very opulent kingdom of Hiranyakashipu. And commentators say, keeping it simple, the Lord doesn't award that to a devotee that has material attachment. The Lord may award such destinations or situations for one who is not going to fall into Maya trying to be the enjoyer of an opulent situation. The Lord will say it again. The Lord will withhold opulence from the devotee if it's going to cause them to fall into Maya. So if you're not very opulent, don't worry about it. Krishna's being kind. And if you're very opulent, don't worry about it. Krishna's being very kind. Because he'll award the opulence if you're not inclined to be the enjoyer of it. So if you're not inclined to be the enjoyer of it, what are you inclined to? Use it in service. Use it in service. My thoughts are going to the disciple of Prabhupada that he named Ambarish, like as in Maharaj Ambarish. He's another one. He said in the Bhagavatam about Maharaj Ambarish that his opulence surpassed the opulence of the King of Heaven. Yet he had no attraction For him, that opulence was no more meaningful than a pebble on the ground. Supposing you walk out the front door and you see a pebble on the ground. Look at that, a pebble. Insignificant. Insignificant. But he had such opulence, it surpassed the opulence of heaven. So he was one that it was not a problem for him because he had no material attraction. So he was endowed with so much opulence. Yudhisthira Maharaj, really nice section in the Bhagavatam, where Yudhisthira Maharaj wanted the Rajasuya Yagya, not so that he could become king, but he specifically, I just spent 4 hours preparing something for the Chinese devotees on this topic. It's chapter 72 of Canto 10. His interest was two things. His interest was that the people who are not devotees, the Kauravas in particular, but persons who saw Krishna as an ordinary person, they would understand what's the consequence of having that kind of regard for Krishna, and what's the consequence of having regard for Krishna as the Supreme Person. He wanted to establish that firmly. That was his motivation. It's like 16 times it's described like that. That's what he wanted. And to perform the Rajasuya Yagya, one of the requirements is, by law, by Vedic law, is all the other kings would have to pay tribute, meaning they would accept him as the emperor. So he sent his 4 brothers in the 4 directions to extract tribute or taxes. And if any of them would disagree, then they had to fight. And they weren't killed, but they were defeated so that they could then give their tax and accept Yudhisthira as the emperor. And all that tax was to be used for the yagya. The purpose of the yagya being to honor Krishna. Because it's one of the procedures of a Rajasuya, very difficult to perform yagya, that the most honored person in the world would be honored in the Rajasuya yagya, not the king himself, but Krishna in this case. So he was the guest of honor. But Maharaj Yudhisthira, with all of this opulence, it's in the first canto also. He had so much opulence. Indra was envious. But he had no attraction. How is that possible? Because commonly people, when they have opulence, they become enamored by the opulence and use the opulence for, lavish life. Commonly. He wasn't interested in lavish life. He was interested in one thing, Krishna. When Krishna came to visit him at Indraprastha, at his invitation to preside over the Rajasuya Yagya, there was a big reception when Krishna came with his 16,108 queens, all carried in palanquins, with their 10 sons and all their maid servants and yada, yada, yada. It was a big deal. And there were formalities to receive them all and accommodations and so forth and so on. Finally, there's Yudhisthira, the next emperor of the world, fully cultured, fully knows what the procedures and, standards are for receiving such a person. And he was so stunned, his mind went blank. He didn't do anything. He could only stare at Krishna. He forgot all the etiquettes. His heart was one with Krishna. And Krishna loved him so much also, like Arjuna. So, Krishna may award opulence unto someone who has no attraction for opulence. That's the message. And Dhruva was qualified like that because he had lost all interest, although previously that was his program. He wanted a kingdom to rule. So Vishnu continues instructing or responding to Dhruva's prayer. My dear Dhruva, I shall award you the glowing planet known as the pole star, which will continue to exist even after the dissolution at the end of the millennium. End of the millennium in this case means Kalpa, or the day of Brahma. When all the planets from the heavenly region down are dissolved during the partial annihilation at the end of Brahma's day or during Brahma's night, Dhruvaloka continues. No one has ever ruled this planet, which is surrounded by all the solar systems, planets and stars. So we saw this illustration before, and now we're getting to see it again. This illustration is taken from a book that was compiled by Dhruva Maharaj after some years, 3-4 years of study in Vedic cosmology. And this is an illustration from his book to describe Vedic cosmology. What you see in the background there is the 7 concentric islands and oceans of Jambudweep. Jambudweep is the plain of Bhumandala. Directly, Jambudweep is the central island. Each dweepa there's names for each of the dweepas. So it's Bhumandala with its 7 concentric circles of oceans and islands. And then above Bhumandala is Bhuvarloka and Svargaloka. Right, so Brahma Gayatri, Bhur, Bhuvar, and Svargaloka. Those are 3 planetary systems, and above them are 4 more. So at the top of the Svargaloka region is Dhruvaloka. That's where it's located in the universe. And the planets from Dhruvaloka down, they're all moving in a clockwise direction, vertically below, but in a clockwise direction, with their right side to Dhruvaloka, because Dhruvaloka is a spiritual planet. Just like when we circumambulate a deity or Tulsi Devi, when we circumambulate Tulsi Devi, it's your right side is to Tulsi Devi. You circumambulate 3 times. So the planets, Bhuvarloka and Svargaloka, they move in a clockwise direction, circumambulating, offering their respects to the pole star, or the planet of Vishnu. The planet of Vishnu and the pole star and Dhruvaloka are all the same. Sweta-dweep, the Sanskrit term. Where the Sweta Dweepa, where the island in the middle of the Milk Ocean, where Kshirodakshay Vishnu resides, that's where Dhruvaloka is. That's where Dhruvaloka is. And you see those lines coming down from Dhruvaloka? Up in the upper right corner, it explains those are ropes of air that are connected from Dhruvaloka to each planet that's moving in a clockwise direction, vertically below Dhruvaloka, and the ropes of air are moved by a celestial wind. So as the celestial wind blows, the ropes of air move, and the ropes of air move the planets. That's how the planets circumambulate, according to 5th Canto Bhagavatam in Vedic cosmology. So Dhruva is going to be presiding at Dhruvaloka, the pole star. And you see that blue dolphin in the middle? This is called Shishumara. Some of you may know a little bit about Vedic cosmology. Sushumara, it's described as a depiction of the heavenly, the upper planetary realm, and how they are moving in relation to Dhruvaloka. It's an object of meditation for yogis who want to do astral travel. They meditate on the Sushumara, and it moves as the planets move. That's a little cosmology background. All the luminaries in the sky circumambulate this planet just as bulls, this is from the 5th canto, just as bulls tread around a central pole for the purpose of crushing grains, keeping the pole star to their right. All the stars inhabited by the great sages like Dharma, Agni, Kashyapa, and Shukra circumambulate this planet, which continues to exist even after the dissolution of all others. So there's a photograph of the sky, and it's very bright. Dhruvaloka is very bright. Although the pole star existed before its occupation by Dhruva Maharaj, it had no predominating deity or personality. I give you that residence. So there you see the Big Dipper, and the part of the Big Dipper that's where the ladle is points towards the pole star. So sometime you can check it out in the sky. I give you that residence which is eternal. So that's a meaning of Dhruva, eternal. It's a good name for him, Dhruvaloka. Possessing the zodiac belt of planets, constellations, and stars, which are like oxen circulating around the central pillar to which they are tied. This place remains fixed for the duration of Brahma's life. For those living for that duration, some live for that duration. At the time of final destruction, some say that Dhruva ascends to Mahavaikuntha. Even though existing within the material universe, Dhruvaloka has the qualities of Shvetadvip, Mathura, and Dwarka. Interesting, huh? So he's being awarded that place not only as his residence, but the presiding personality. After your father goes to the forest and awards you the rule of his kingdom, you will rule continuously the entire world for 36,000 years. So he will take the place of his father to rule on earth. And all your senses will continue to be as strong as they are now. You will never become old. The Lord continued, listen to this, sometime in the future, your brother Uttama will go hunting in the forest, and while absorbed in hunting, he'll be killed. Your stepmother Saruchi, being maddened upon the death of her son, will go to search him out in the forest, but she will be devoured by a forest fire. In other words, the reaction for her offending a great devotee, in this case Dhruva, is going to be fulfilled or consummated by this untimely death. So a little discussion, we talked about it already, but there's 10 offenses against chanting, and the offense against a Vaishnava is offense number 1, sadhu ninda, called the elephant offense. There's a tourist vehicle getting knocked over by an elephant. Don't mess with elephants. Don't make the elephant offense of what you see on the right side. Vilification, ninda, criticizing a Vaishnava, very serious business. Because of having insulted Dhruva Maharaj, Suruchi would become mad upon the death of her son and would enter a forest fire, and thus her life would be ended. This was specifically mentioned by the Lord to Dhruva because he was determined for revenge against her. Now that was all gone from his heart by the purification of the bhakti process he had undergone. But it had been there before. And the Lord doesn't excuse offense. She didn't go and apologize to Dhruva and clear the offense. We'll see as we go forward. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way, you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life. And at the time of your death, you'll be able to remember me. And that's all of those things were forecast. They all happened. Ante Narayana Smriti. You know the phrase? At the end of life, the goal is to remember Narayana, or the personality of Godhead. So Dhruva was being benedicted like that. This is Prabhupada's purport. The result of whatever we do in executing spiritual activities is successful if we can remember Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This program of constant remembrance can be disturbed by many things. Have you noticed? What are some prominent tendencies or emotional responses that our own, not Dhruva's or somebody else's, that throw us away from remembering Krishna or being connected with Krishna? So you don't need to answer that to me, but you need to answer to yourself. Because this world is a place of disturbance. Dukkhalayama shashvatam. By design. By design. It's meant by design to teach us this isn't separate enjoyment from the personality of Godhead is not enjoyment. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. Yoni means a place of birth, like the womb of a mother is yoni. And the place of birth of dukkha is anticipation of happiness by bringing senses to sense objects. And there's happiness out there. Ye, he, samsparsha ja, bhoga. Senses meeting sense objects, getting bhoga, enjoyment. Dukkha yonaya evate. That's the birthplace of dukkha. Some years ago, I was at a Rath Yatra, and there was a new person had started coming to the temple, and it was a Chinese lady married to an Indian man, and she maybe 35 or so in years of age. And she said, I've been looking forward to meeting you. I just have one question. What's that? Why creation? Because we wanted it. That's why. And wanted it means if there is a desire for enjoying separately from Krishna, it's not possible. So in order to give that which is not possible to the living entity, here's an illusory, an apparition of enjoyment called the material world. Go ahead. It's not enjoyment. It's dukkha. Please understand. There isn't happiness apart from me, but you want it. I'm advising against it, but you're very demanding. Okay. Here it is. That which looks like happiness and is actually distress. That's this world. And so when we engage ourselves with identifying with what we're not, we get dukkha. And there's varieties of tendencies. And then there's varieties of responses to the dukkha that comes from those tendencies. And the nature of Maya is she's very good at keeping us distracted from what real happiness is. The real happiness is being in a loving exchange with Krishna, the proprietor of everything. That's real happiness. And we struggle. The most important factor in this verse, how to remember Krishna always. And what helps in constant remembrance of Krishna? Sacrifice. So our sacrifice, Dhruva's sacrifice looked like it looked. Our sacrifice is Nama Sankirtan, that yagya, Sankirtan yagya. That's the best way. No. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains, it's not just the holy name, it's all the activities that flow in service of the holy name, like life. But spiritual sacrifice rests upon the name, and then from the name that's an appeal, what's the chanting of the holy name? Prabhupada makes it really clear. It's an appeal for a relationship. The relationship of service. Please engage me. Please accept me. Prabhupada's words. It's a call, it's a prayer for service, for a relationship. And then when the opportunity for service comes, to do that service, not in the mood of enjoyment, I got a reward for my sacrifice, now let me become the enjoyer of that reward. No. Let it be used in service to Krishna. You will go to, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. You will go to my abode, worshipped by all planets, higher than the Big Dipper, and the planets of the 7 rishis, from which you will not return, having gone there. So it's another diagram where the length from that ladle portion of the Big Dipper, it's 4 times the distance between those 2 stars, and there's pointing at the North Star. Mat sthanam means my abode. And sarvaloka namaskritam, worshipped by all the worlds. Prabhupada's purport. Dhruva Loka, or the pole star, is the abode of Lord Vishnu within this material world. Upon it, there is an ocean of milk. And within that ocean, there's an island known as Svetadweep. It is clearly indicated that this planet is situated above the 7 planetary systems of the Saptarishis. There's Saptarishis and there's the planets of the Saptarishis. They're prominent stars in the sky for those that like astronomy or astrology. Saptarishis are very important. And Dhruvaloka is above it in a vertical dimension of the universe. And because this planet is Vishnu Loka, it is worshipped by all other planetary systems. Here's some teaching that comes from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Indra is unsure where the Lord is. He might be in Vaikuntha, beyond the material world, or else on the Vaikuntha planet, Ramapriya, inside this universe. He might be on Dhruva's planet, known as Vishnu Pada, or he might be on the island of Svetadweep, the ocean of milk. Again, from Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Jaimini Rishi, the principal authority for the Samaveda, spoke Brihat Bhagavatamrita to Sri Janamejaya, a worthy son of Maharaj Parikshit, as a kila or supplement to Jaimini's own Mahabharata, much like the Harivangsha is the kila or supplement to Vyasadev's Mahabharata. This is Sanatana Goswami's commentary to his own book. He wrote the book and he wrote a commentary to his book. And he's explaining what's the place of Brihat Bhagavatamrita. This is not really on the topic of the Dhruva story, but it's just interesting. So Harivangsha, maybe some of you heard this. Harivangsha, it's a supplement to Mahabharata. Now Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasa, and Harivangsha is compiled by Vyasa. So it's an authoritative scripture. And it gives lots of very interesting details about Hari, about the personality of Godhead. It's an authoritative literature. So as Harivangsha is a supplement or kila to Mahabharata, so also Janamejaya is hearing from Jaimini Rishi his supplement, just as Harivangsha is a supplement. This Brihat Bhagavatamrita is a supplement to Mahabharata. So that's it for this class. Dhruva Loka is one of the lokas like Svetadweep, Mathura, and Dwaraka. This is further explanation in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. The great sage Maitreya said, after being worshipped and honored by the boy, Dhruva Maharaj, and after offering him his abode, Lord Vishnu, on the back of Garuda, returned to his abode as Dhruva Maharaj looked on. Now, what's Dhruva Maharaj feeling? Mixed feelings. When the Lord went back to his abode, he wanted to go with him, but he couldn't. And why couldn't he? Because he desired this stupid material get-back mentality, power position from Vishnu. So he was in ecstasy having that association, and he's very, very sad because he couldn't go with him. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. And after weeping for some time, he went back. Vishwanath writes, after Dhruva had attained his desired goal from worshipping the feet of Vishnu through his determination, and he returned home, but he was not satisfied. Next verse. This is now Vidura making further inquiry. My dear Brahmana, that's he's speaking to Maitreya, the abode of the Lord is very difficult to attain. It can be attained only by pure devotional service, which alone pleases the most affectionate, merciful Lord. Dhruva Maharaj achieved this position even in one life, and he was very wise and conscientious. Why then was he not very pleased? Having attained the supreme abode of the merciful Lord, which is rarely attained, through worshipping the Lord's feet within one lifetime, though he was knowledgeable, why did he consider himself unfulfilled? Good question. Prabhupada writes in his purport, the word artha, vit, which refers to one who knows how to discriminate between reality and unreality, is very significant in this connection, and artavit is also called the Paramahamsa. So he's very qualified person. Why is he feeling sad? And that's what our class, part 7, is going to be about. Moving from resentment, he felt regret. He was simply ashamed. Maitreya answered. Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly aggrieved. And thus, when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had previously in his mind. From remembering his previous condition, he felt remorse. Dhruva considered himself imperfect. He prayed with the desire for a high position, but on attaining a benediction which surpassed that material position, he criticized himself. Not specific to the Dhruva Maharaj story, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that an important form of tapa, or austerity, for a devotee is this: it's regret. Like today's Ekadasi. And probably some of us are in, minimally some tapa, some austerity. But an essence of Vaishnava austerity is regret. Regret specifically, having misused this human form of life to whatever degree we misused the human form of life prior to a life of devotion. And even in our early stages of life of devotion, still being distracted. Now, Dhruva is beyond being distracted now, but he regrets that he was previously not just distracted, but immersed in material ambition, in a get-back mentality. He very seriously regrets it. And that's purification. That's why he was feeling sad. Vidura asked, Maitreya answered. Although in pure devotional service there is no demand from the Lord, because of his childish nature, he had demanded something. Thus, although the Lord also fulfilled his desire, he was not very pleased. He means Dhruva. Rather, he was ashamed that he had demanded something from the Lord, for he should not have done this. Dhruva Maharaj, influenced by a revengeful attitude towards his insulting stepmother, did not think of mukti, nor did he know what mukti was. Therefore, he failed to aim for mukti as his goal of life. Now notice, the scene is there in the center of the image, the drawing, but around is a fire. That's his anger, revenge. Sense gratification means striving for domination over material nature. The whole competition between conditioned souls is based upon domination of this material nature. Dhruva Maharaj's propensity in the beginning was like that. He wanted to dominate this material world in a greater position than Lord Brahma. He was very much ashamed and morose to think that although he had gone to Madhavan, giving up the kingdom of his father, and he had gotten a spiritual master like Narada Muni, he was still thinking of revenge against his stepmother and wanted to occupy an exalted post within this material world. The images are meant to show this Hari Bhakti Sudodaya verse that we've heard like 4 times already, where in the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya, when Dhruva is offered by Lord Vishnu whatever he wanted, he said, with great regret, I was desiring, what's shown in the lower left, pieces of broken glass. And instead you've given me this valuable jewel. So I have Swamin Katar Tosmi Varam Diyache. I have no desire for anything further. Your association is all that I want. Here's a picture of Vasudeva and Devaki being reunited with Krishna and Balaram. Prabhupada writes, Dhruva Maharaj was elevated to the Vasudeva platform when he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead present personally before him. Vasudeva state means pure mind. The Vasudeva platform refers to the stage at which material contamination is conspicuous by absence. Only, or in other words, where there's no question of material modes of nature, and one can therefore see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's steps. The second step, Dhruva Maharaj's recognition of Guru and Krishna's mercy and his own conditioned tendency. We're almost done with the chapter. Dhruva Maharaj thought to himself, to endeavor to be situated in the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord is not an ordinary task, because even the great brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, who practiced Ashtanga Yoga in trance, attained the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet only after many, many births. Within 6 months, I achieved the same result. Yet due to my thinking differently from the Lord, pratakmatihi, I fell down from my position. This pratakbina, it's a phrase that's used in Kapila Dev's teachings, describing bhakti that's mixed with ignorance and with passion. Pratak means a separate interest. Bhakti with a separate interest. Because bhakti means only one interest. That's what the teaching is. Bhakti means anyabhilashtatu shunyam jnana karma dhyanavartam. That's anukulyena krishnanushilanam. That's bhakti. And where there's separate interests, it's mixed, then it's pratak matihi, thinking differently from the Lord. He achieved a very elevated position, but the Lord hadn't forgotten what his previous order. So what about us? Is there hope for us? We may achieve some material result from our devotional service. We may not also, but we may achieve some material result from our devotional service. That's unfortunate. There's a really nice description. Some of you like reading Prabhupada's books. So there's a very nice description of the story of King Nriga. You know the story of King Nriga? He became a lizard? Oh yeah, okay. He liked Krishna book. I keep asking him to remember stories of Krishna from Krishna book. King Nriga. So I'm going past my time. That's what that says. King Nriga, but you like stories. King Nriga was the son of Ikshvaku. Who was Ikshvaku? Ikshvaku was the son of Manu. Vaivasvata Manu's son was Ikshvaku. Right? Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. Krishna says to Arjuna, long ago I taught this science to the Vivaswan. Vivaswan taught it to Manu. Manu taught it to Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku brought that teaching to this earth planet and established it in the kingdom of Ayodhya, which was built by Manu. And he ruled there. Nriga was his son, one of Ikshvaku's sons. Ikshvaku had many sons. So Nriga was a very pious, super pious. Very, very, very charitable. He was a devotee with mixed desire. So he had, with his mixed desire, he was like, he gives a description of what kind of charity he did is like unbelievable. So, fortunately or unfortunately, in the zillions of cows he was giving away, one of the cows wandered back into the herd of cows, and he gave the cow to the same brahmana that he had given the cow to a different brahmana. And when that second brahmana was taking the cow back to his home, the first brahmana said, "Wait a minute, that's my cow." He said, "No, it's my cow. The king gave it to me. Let's go to the king and settle it." The king said, "Oh, it was a mistake. Let me give you 1,000 cows of equal quality with this one cow. Either one of you." "No." And they left angered. Different versions say they cursed him. Other versions say that just by the offense of taking the property of a brahmana, he had to face consequences. So he faced the consequence. At the time of his death, he went to the abode of Yamaraj, who gave him a choice. Would you like to receive the bounty of all the pious activities you've done first, and then when that's over, you get the reaction for this taking the property of a brahmana? Or would you like to get the taking of the property of the brahmana out of the way first, and then it's just enjoyment? He said, I'll take the second one. He said, very well, you become a lizard. And poof, he became a lizard. And he was found in the bottom of a well by sons of Krishna. And when Krishna went to rescue the lizard, just by touching the lizard, this demigod body came out of the body of the lizard. And Krishna is asking, what are you doing in the body of a lizard? Who are you? How did this happen? He tells his story. And then, listen to this, a Vimana descends from the heavenly realm to take this celestial, heavenly King Riga to the heavenly realm, because he had done so much pious activity and he was being rewarded the fruit of his pious activity. And Krishna blessed him and said, when you finish, you can come to me, to my abode. There's consequences for being mixed. You may get what you want. That can be a problem, because he couldn't go to Krishna. Dhruva couldn't go to Krishna. And King Riga couldn't go to Krishna because he had this material desire. So he got his material desire fulfilled, but he had to wait. So, what's your choice? There's a menu. Stay with mixed bhakti, get the fruits of your mixed bhakti, have heavenly enjoyment, and maybe you'll go back to the spiritual world afterwards, like King Riga did. Maybe you won't, because you may not see Krishna like King Riga did. Just by seeing Krishna, by the touch of Krishna, became purified. So this pratak mati, watch out. Having separate interests, it's problematic. And you may feel sorry, like Dhruva felt. Alas, just look at me. I'm so unfortunate. I approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can immediately cut the chain of repetition of birth and death, but still, out of my foolishness, anatmayam, out of my foolishness, I prayed for things which are perishable. Anatmayam means that which is devoid of Atma, or the state of ignorance. Though the devotee does not ask, the Lord destroys material existence for the devotee. I attained his lotus feet just by having received Vaishnava Diksha. I prayed to attain what I had vowed, which is temporary. That is my fault. The Lord, however, by his mercy, gave me a place which is not temporary. Lots of lessons, huh? What could be the cause of my ignorance? Is it the influence of the demigods who became envious of seeing my austerities? Maybe they're worried about their own backside because they couldn't breathe. What were the original instructions of the sage Narada to Dhruva? He gave him very clear instructions: give up this get-back mentality, and so forth and so on. But Dhruva had a doubt. Had the demigod dissipated my intelligence? And only for this reason could I not accept the genuine benediction of the instructions of sage Narada? Was that the reason? I was under the influence of the illusory energy. Being ignorant of the actual facts, I was sleeping on her lap under a vision of duality. I saw my brother as my enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking, they are my enemies. Big lesson. It's filled in the Prahlad Maharaj prayers and the whole story. Friend enemy is a big deal. It's material life. You identify with the body, and then there are people that are your friends and the people that are not your friends. Enemy is the vision of duality. How to get free from it? You have to get free from the bodily conception. That's starters. We make friends and enemies as dictated by the illusory energy. Dhruva Maharaj therefore said, Daivim mayam upashritya. The cause of his bewilderment was his association with the illusory material energy. It wasn't the demigods. It was his choice. Desiring Maya. That's a choice. I was at an event over the Memorial Day weekend. Maybe some of you went from here to the Sadhu Sangha event in Utah. So I was over on the East Coast in the Potomac Temple with Mahatma. He gave a whole class on this. There's a choice that we make. Now, he was speaking, he was explaining how to deal with negative emotions, because it's an issue for people, modern issue, big one. Negative emotions and struggling and depression and all that. So his main theme, he's like put it in big letters several times, I choose. We don't have to go in the direction of the hurt and the negative. Whatever happens, happens. It was a big topic in the earlier Dhruva Maharaj story, acceptance of our circumstance. And then you choose your response. You don't have to choose Maya as your response. You can, but you don't have to. It's a choice. Same understanding with Prahlad. That's Prahlad in Mayapur, offering his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. Friend and enemy, big part of his teaching. When he was challenged, when Dhruva Prahlad was challenged by his teachers, where did you learn this bhakti thing? This is the message of our enemy. Vishnu is our enemy. Where'd you learn this? And Prahlad said, I've heard. Didn't say who he heard it from. He heard it from Narada. I heard about this friend-enemy idea, and now I'm seeing it. Wow. It's a real thing. Friend-enemy. Vishnu is the enemy. Or those who are dear to Vishnu are the enemy. Or whatever other people have friend-enemy consciousness. Going back to the previous chapter. No, excuse me. This is not the previous chapter. This is Prahlad Maharaj. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose external energy has created the distinction of my friend and my enemy by diluting the intelligence of man. Indeed, I am now actually experiencing this, for although I had previously heard of it from authoritative sources, he doesn't disclose Narada's name, but Narada's teaching this, and now we're hearing it in the Bhagavatam. What's the reality? We're all servants, not an enemy or friend. And everyone is working under different directions from the Lord, who directs every living entity according to his mentality. So if somebody's heading in a dark direction because of their dark desires and their choices, and they're being facilitated by the personality of Godhead, it's not, they're just caught up in the modes of nature like often we are. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes, I prayed for useless things, which are like medicine given to a dead person. Having pleased the Lord, who is the soul of the universe, difficult to please by austerities, and who can destroy material existence, I prayed for material enjoyment, since I was devoid of good fortune. Beautiful painting, huh? Because of my state of complete foolishness and paucity of pious activities, although the Lord offered me his personal service, I wanted material name, fame, and prosperity. My case is just like that of a poor man who, when he satisfied a great emperor who wanted to give him anything he might ask, out of ignorance he asked only for a few broken grains of rice. Third step, Dhruva's heart filled with the Lord's glory and with gratitude. We heard this in his prayers. He expressed this. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes, what pride I have asking for material things. It is just like a poor man having lost his intelligence, begging some grains of rice from an emperor. However, this is commentary on the verse we just read. Being clever and very generous, the king gives more wealth than one can imagine to that person. Similarly, the Lord gave me his own abode to live in. Oh, I am the height of foolishness. What unlimited mercy and generosity of the Lord. He's mature. Dhruva then became completely paralyzed in astonishment for a moment. If we desire material prosperity or anything other than the service of the Lord and his devotees, it is a sign of misfortune. That's it. The moving from resentment to responsibility, we'll discuss this evening, and it's still on chapter 9. This whole story starts in chapter 8. It's going to start speeding up. Don't worry. Promise you. Lots of nice lessons. Let's see if there's some discussion. I mean, it's 1 o'clock, huh? 11:30, 1 o'clock, an hour and a half. Where's the portable microphone? Would you like to do the service again? It's over here.
It will not sound, but the sound is going.
Should I give him this one? So the people in the room can hear?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful.
Go ahead. Something.
My question is with regards to, we understand Suruchi, we had to suffer the result of offending a Vaishnava.
Yes.
But what about King Uttanappa? Because he was complicit in that. He didn't speak even though he had the power.
We discussed this already, but the answer is tapa. He had the purification of regret. Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaches that tapa for a Vaishnava is regret. I mentioned it during this class, and that's the answer. He became purified by that tapa, and he followed in the footsteps of his son. When his son was mature, he did exactly what his son did. Maybe not with the same intensity, but he went to the forest to perfect himself in devotion to the personality of Godhead. But it started with tapa. And for you to be sure, profuse apology. Again and again and again and again. He felt really bad. His regret, his begging his forgiveness from his son, and his following in the footsteps of his son. That was his purification. Your brother has one. Give him the other one. Give him the other one.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. My question is that how would like the material energy Maya like how would it control over Dhruva who was a devotee?
Are you a devotee?
No.
Oh. Is your brother a devotee? Ah. Does he ever get angry? Does he ever get angry?
Yes.
But he's a devotee. For a pure devotee like Dhruva, this was also discussed. Do you like Bhagavad Gita?
Read so much.
Okay. When you get home, your father can show you chapter 9, text 30 and 31. In chapter 9, text 30, Krishna explains the answer to your question. What is bad behavior? Durachar. Achar means behavior. Durachar means bad behavior. And Sudurachar means really bad behavior. Apichet means even if. Sudurachar. If the devotee does Sudurachar, it's not going to happen. Maybe, a little bit, but not Sudurachar. But if it happens, that's what happened to Dhruva. Sudurachar. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Ananya bhak means undivided devotion. If someone like Dhruva is situated in undivided devotion, Krishna corrects. Text 31 says, Krishna corrects that situation. He intervenes and corrects the situation. So, the way we discussed this the other day was, have you ever been by the ocean? Yes? Yes. So the ocean has, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, the tide goes in, the tide goes out, high tide, low tide. But sometimes there's a tidal wave. Now they call it a tsunami. What's that? It's like some explosion happens in the sea, and here comes a giant wave, and it's not just tide comes in, tide goes out, it covers the land. And then what happens afterwards? The water recedes, and its tide comes in, tide goes out. That's that Sudurachar. Sometimes, great devotees like Dhruva and others, sometimes there's a tsunami. Some extreme circumstance, they do some very bad behavior. Krishna corrects it, and then it gets back to tide in and tide out. Because they're ananya bhakta, undivided devotee. That's how it happens. Tidal wave. Don't make a habit of it though. Okay? Okay. I see a few hands up in the back.
So, when Krishna gave him Dhruva Loka, was that just fulfilling his material desires? Was that just a place in the material world?
No, it's a spiritual position. He was qualified, and he was given a spiritual position. Now he had service to do. It wasn't just hanging out. He was doing service. He is doing service today.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Uh, my question is that from both of the examples of Dhruva Maharaj and King Guru, you explained that the original intention, like for Dhruva Maharaj, for example, the original intention was like satisfying material desire, and then it sort of turned spiritual once he performed austerities. And so once he achieved pure devotion, he had to satisfy that position of whatever he originally intended. Same with King Rugu, as you said, Maharaj. Once he was touched by Krishna, he no longer became a lizard, and he had to satisfy his good karma. But from what I understand, if we remember Krishna at the time of death, and if we're a pure devotee, and if we die, then we go directly back to Krishna and our karma gets sort of nullified, from my understanding. Is that a wrong understanding, or is it a special case? Thank you, Maharaj.
Not a wrong understanding. Some editing is required from what you said, but it's minor. Karma can be dissolved before the time of death. Karma can be dissolved by chanting the holy name once. What to speak of chanting the holy name without offense. Now, the karma, for example, the karma of a Jamila dissolved even by Namavas. Not just when the Avadutas came, but he was regularly calling the name, intending to call his son, but he was calling the name. So his karma was dissolved by that. Doesn't take away the tendency for bad stuff and generating more karma. But the previous karma is removed even by calling the name once. So powerful is the name. But that's just a slight edit from what you said. Now, the goal is not, for some people the goal is salvation. I want out of here, this is a crazy place. I want to be with Krishna because this is a crazy place. It's not really about satisfying Krishna, it's about me. We had some discussion about this in our earlier classes. Moving from it's all about me to it's all about Krishna. So the back to Godhead qualification is it's all about Krishna. And then when it's all about Krishna, then what Krishna can send me wherever he wants to send me. It's quite okay. I'm eager to be with Krishna wherever he wants to send me. Please give me the association of devotees. And I can be with Krishna, but in the association of devotees wherever I am. Again, there's stages and higher stages above. Okay?
Turn the button on. Press the button.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful class. My question is, what was the offense done by Dhruva's brother that he had to be killed by the Yakshas, Maharaj?
That question was asked earlier. The answer is there wasn't some offense done by his brother. It's not that when you die, or even by an accidental death, the cause of death or the cause of an accidental death is some bad karma and you're getting the fruit of your bad karma.
It was accidental. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is about the nasty lady Suichi.
Let me just back to the response to her question. It's not just accidental, but circumstantial. Now, the Lord may have some other plan, which may have been whatever the Lord's plan was. We don't know what that plan is. He may have had some other service for him. He may have so many maybes, but so it's not accidental as much as circumstantial. We don't know the cause. Go ahead.
Before Suniti and Narmuni suggesting reach out to women and go to Supreme Person, reach out to Supreme Person at your Godhead and perform their austerity. So Suichi being a nasty lady, she did mention about performing austerities, right? How can we take that? So she being a nasty lady, she did came up with a solution, or like she suggested a solution to reach out to God, right? How can we take this?
Your specific question is, what's the role of the austerities? That part of what she said, is that what your question is?
When Dhruva went with a problem, but she came up with a solution that reach out to God.
Yes. So your question specifically is, why impacted or inserted in the instruction was austerities and devotional service. Is that what your question is? What was the role of austerities in her instruction for Dhruva?
No.
That's
How
not your
she,
question.
like, though she's not a devotee or a pure devotee.
Oh, she was a great devotee. She had all faith. She wasn't, she wasn't a silly lady. She wasn't just giving mouth lip service. She had deep devotion. Her character demonstrated it. How she responded demonstrated her deep character. And it's from devotion to Krishna. And that's part of what she said. The personality of Godhead, that's how Brahma got what he got, that's how Swayambhu Brahmana got what he got. You want, follow them. Go to the personality of God. She had great faith.
And she faced the consequences for what offenses she made.
No, you're saying Suruchi or Suniti?
Suruchi.
Oh. She is manipulative lady. She was placing herself above Krishna. You do austerity for him and you'll get the good fortune of taking birth in my womb. She's a manipulative lady. She's from a family that had devotion to Krishna, but she's manipulating. She's not a good lady. She knew, and she was manipulating what she knew for her own purposes. Some people do that. Okay, are we? Last one, okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you mentioned that Dhruva is the place where there is the milk ocean and it's the word Vishnu. My question is, does that mean when the demigods go to pray to Vishnu, be it either the case that we read in Krishna's first chapter or even in Dhruva's realization of the Hare Sutta, that they go to Dhruva?
The answer of two things. I didn't say it, I just read what Prabhupada wrote in his purport. But the answer is yes. They're interchangeable names. It's the same place. It can be identified this way, that way, the other way, the other way, the other way. Same place. It's where the demigods go. In the chapter 1 of Canto 10, to pray for the Lord to appear and help Mother Earth, etc., etc. That's where they go. Is it clear?
How to reconcile that no one has attained or has been to Dhruva?
Oh, he left the seat for him. He gave him some service. I mean, he's the personality of God, and he can run the show without Dhruva. He was just like, had a holding pattern until Dhruva got there. It's the early stage of the universe. And there's Svetadweep, there's Milk Ocean, there's the abode of Hirodakshaya Vishnu. And Dhruva's going to help, So there's a seat over there. That's where you go when you, after 36,000 years. No problem. No problem. Srila Prabhupada ki.
I'm sorry, Maharaj. I go to.
She's got the microphone.